What made you change at age 33?
The spark was being denied that life insurance policy. My wife was pregnant with our second son, and I wanted to, as a father and as a provider for my family, I wanted to make sure that my family would be taken care of if something happened to me. It wasn't like I was going through the formalities of getting a life insurance policy. Like, this is something that I was proud to be putting in place for my family so that if something happened, that they would be able to take care of themselves. And getting denied was like a ton of bricks coming down. Not only would they not give me the insurance, so I couldn't be proud to know that if something did happen to me, that my family would be able to take care of themselves, but the fact that they didn't think I was going to make it 20 years was even more hard to take, because here I am holding an infant with an 18-month-old toddler running around. So my focus was eating more fruits and vegetables every single day. And I was letting that naturally crowd out all the other stuff that I should be eating less of. So I didn't start with a hard line on no cheese. I didn't start with a hard line on no bread or flours or those kind of things. So glad that I did it this way. It wasn't necessarily as conscious. It's kind of what I heard. I was working in pharmaceutical research, and I had more of an informatics role there where I was helping with data analysis and things like that to help bring new drugs to market. And I was really excited about that when I started working there, because I thought it was an opportunity to help people. And through my own transformation, I realized, wow, I would rather help people to not need medications, to come up with new medicines that may or may not help people to actually feel better.
Hi, everyone. It's great to be back. I'm doing the show solo today because Dotsie's at the New York Marathon, spreading the non-dairy word to all the athletes there. But I'm excited for you to hear this guest today because he has a lot of very solid, actionable information to share that will help you overcome your own health and weight challenges. And as you know, if you've listened to this podcast at all, I like actionable information. Now, one thing we discussed is how important it is for each of us to have bright lines that we don't cross when it comes to our health. And when I say us, I mean Anthony and me. It doesn't apply to everybody, but for many of us, choosing to abstain completely from a food or a habit is easier than being moderate about it. You know, sometimes having it or sometimes doing it, because it's a clear decision that when we take it out so completely, it no longer takes up mental or emotional space. I mean, well, in the beginning, we might miss it, but after a short while, we'll forget about it and find another less triggering thing that we can put in its place. So I'm that way, for example, with meat, certainly. I mean, meat's not a food to me. There's absolutely no thought of ever having it. But I'm also that way with eating processed foods and sugar now. Things I thought I could never get rid of. And it's been way easier for me to give them up 100% than to try to have them in small doses. Because as I know I've said this before, but I can never get enough of sugar. So why even start? But that's me. But if you're someone also who's been afraid to give up some things completely for at least a few months, then maybe just give it a try. Because like Anthony, you might never go back to them. And we also discussed planning today, and I want to reiterate how important planning is for a healthy lifestyle. It doesn't just happen and it doesn't just continue. We have to be vigilant. I always make sure I have healthy food in my house or when I travel. So healthy will always be my default because let's face it, I mean, unhealthy is the default in the outside world. When we're out and about, it's so much easier and faster and cheaper to find junk food than whole food, which is really unfortunate, but it's true. So we need to plan. And we discussed that and the importance of that today in the show. And Anthony also talked about having a strong why. And I really think that's an important point. And that fear kickstarted him to his new healthy lifestyle and losing so much weight. But joy is what motivated him to keep going. Anyway, there's so much that we talked about on this episode. I know you're going to really enjoy it and be inspired by him. So let's get to it.
What if I told you that you could feed your dog food that's not only healthier, but also better for the planet? Introducing Earth Animal Wisdom from the Seed Recipe dog food, crafted with care to be healthy for your pet and gentle on the environment. And this complete and balanced formula is carefully air dried at the optimal temperature to preserve vital nutrients your dog needs to thrive, regardless of their age or size, with pure plant nutrition. This is honestly the best vegan dried dog food we have ever tried. It's so easy to purchase too. You're just going to go to earthanimal.com/switch for good. And then also just simply place switch for good in the discount code box at checkout for 20% off your order. So go run, buy your Earth Animal.
So today we share the story of a man who, after years of struggling with his weight and more importantly, the health issues that came with it, experienced an epiphany that sparked a remarkable transformation. In 2005, at 33 years old and weighing 360 pounds, Anthony Masiello was denied a 20-year life insurance policy, making it clear that the company didn't believe he'd live a long life. Confronted with the reality that he might not be there for his family or to see his children's milestones, Anthony knew that he had to act immediately. After several failed attempts to lose weight, he found Dr. Joel Fuhrman's book, Eat to Live, and started a whole food, plant-based lifestyle. In just 2 months, he shed 30 pounds, and within 2 years, he lost 160 pounds, reversing health conditions like high blood pressure, sleep apnea, migraines, and psoriasis. Now, flash forward 15 years, and Anthony is thriving. His incredible journey has been featured in outlets like PBS, The Huffington Post, Forks Over Knives, and Runner's World. He's now the co-founder and CEO of Love Life Telehealth, a wellness network focused on addressing the root causes of chronic disease and offering holistic solutions. So, folks, I'm really thrilled to have Anthony Masiello here today to share his profound experience and undoubtedly inspire you and me, probably, to confront some hard truths in our lives. So, welcome to the show, Anthony.
Oh, thank you so much, Alexandra. Thanks for having me today. I'm really, really excited to talk with you.
I love success stories. I have to say, when I would read like magazines like Self, they had a feature that said success story. That was always the pages I went to first. Yeah. And so this is going to be one of my favorite shows. I love these kind of stories. So I think a lot of us can learn from you because I'm not the only one who loves to be inspired by other people who've overcome huge obstacles. So let's start from the beginning, though. Let's start with, you grew up overweight and maybe even obese, right? Can you tell us a little bit about your life then and what got you to that place?
Yeah, it's honestly, that's the $1 billion question. I don't know what necessarily got me to being obese and unhealthy, but my life was, I don't know, maybe a little bit complicated, a little bit complicated than some of my friends at the time. I'll just say it that way. You know, my mom and brother and I lived in North Carolina, and my father lived in New Jersey. And, you know, the day after school let out, every school year, my brother and I got on an airplane and we flew up to New Jersey, and we spent the summers with my dad. And I don't know what happened, but somehow I left regular Anthony after the end of the 4th grade. And when I got back to North Carolina in the fall to start the next school year, I had gained weight. And I didn't necessarily know that I gained weight. And I don't even know if my friends would have noticed that I gained weight, except for the fact that they hadn't seen me in probably almost 3 months, you know, whatever the time of that break was. But when I got back to school, kids were asking me about it. They're like, wow, you know, how did you, it's 5th grade kids. How'd you get so fat? Was the question that's the one that I remember people asking about. And I don't know what it was, but the problem I had from there is that I became very self-conscious and self-aware that that's how people saw me. And it started to be how I saw myself. And unfortunately, from what I know now, is I think that helped me not only to stay overweight or obese, but to continue to set up a system where I got progressively gained more weight and progressively became, more unhealthy over the years, pretty steadily until, that time that you mentioned around age 33, when I had yet another wake-up call, because I had tried everything. There were times when I was eating no fat, and there were times when I was eating no sugar. And there was times when I was eating no bread. And then, like there was just I tried everything, but I never tried anything, or I never stuck with anything long enough to really get any meaningful long-term results.
So, what kind of habits do you think, though, you had as a teenager and into your 20s that kept your weight going up? Were there some habits that you had or some foods that you ate?
I loved foods. I think that's one thing that was working against me. The other thing is, I think I found comfort in food. And then another thing is, I never really seemed to get full. I mean, I had friends who never really cared if they ate or not. They almost had to eat, but like they had to eat because they knew that they needed, food, but they didn't necessarily want to eat. I kind of always wanted to eat. And so every time there was an opportunity to eat or celebrate or, kind of reflect or, be excited or be sad, or every time there was an opportunity to feel something, I would associate that and combine that with food. And and growing up, I mean, without a question, my go-to was pizza. And going back and forth to New Jersey, I was one of the probably few people in my school in North Carolina who I believe knew what good pizza was, and it was good pizza where, and at the time it was with sausage on it. Like that was my favorite. And we would go to the pizzeria and literally we would watch them, cut the sausage and make the pizza, put it in the oven, bring it out, and that was something that was pretty special to me. No matter what was going on, I could always fit in a couple slices of pizza.
So, at 360 pounds, you were in your early 30s, you weighed 360 pounds, you had a 54-inch waist, your BMI was 44, you had high blood pressure, cholesterol, eczema, psoriasis. Tell us what it felt like to be at that weight and what other things were showing up in your life that didn't feel good, that made you think, now, you said in the beginning that you didn't really realize that you were overweight when you first came back from New Jersey that summer, but there must have been a time where you did realize it because you mentioned that you tried a lot of diets.
Yeah, and it was after people started telling me that I looked fat or that I looked overweight or that I looked big. And then when I would go clothes shopping, and then I got to the point where this is in the 80s where I had to go to a special store to buy clothes when I was in my later years in high school. Like they literally didn't have jeans and pants that fit me. And when my friends were wearing like cool shirts, like they didn't make those cool shirts in the, even if they were t-shirts, they didn't make them in size 3 extra large, back then. So I was wearing, like I wasn't able to. So I was conscious of it, in those ways. It's hard to say what it, well, looking back now, I think I felt tired and I mentioned self-conscious and I felt like everything was a challenge or difficult or hard. Um, little things like, if I had to, spend any time like getting something out of a lower cabinet, it's not like I would squat down and reach into the cabinet and pick it up and stand back up. It's like kind of climb down, get onto the ground, either sit down or lie down, reach into the cabinet, pull it out, get up. But I could do that pretty fast, but it wasn't, until later that I realized, wow, I mean, it's really convenient to be able to just squat down, open the cabinet, grab something out and stand back up. It's like, it's not an ordeal. So, but all of those things I had been used to them for so long that they all kind of felt normal. It wasn't until I got healthy and lost the weight and felt like incredibly vibrant that I realized how less vibrant I felt, when I was overweight and when I was sick. Um, the headaches were one thing that was a difference. I mean, those were, kind of debilitating for me. When I got a migraine headache, I had to go into a dark room. I had prescription medication. I was taking over the counter medication for them, and like nothing really stopped them. So that was one thing that really kind of used to stop my day.
Was that affiliated with you being overweight? Did they go away when you Lost weight, or is it because do you feel you were eating more healthily?
Yeah. I think it's a combination. They definitely went away. So so that's something I'm very grateful for. And I didn't know what they came from. I don't know if they were triggered by sugars. I don't know if they were also triggered by caffeine. I still don't use caffeine, and I think that was probably a trigger for my migraine headaches. I don't know if the weight itself had anything to do with it, but it was certainly all associated with that lifestyle that I was living, you know, pre getting healthy versus, post getting healthy, because they absolutely went away.
And you were vegetarian at your highest weight, is that right?
Yes. And because in the early 90s, actually January 24th, 1994, I gave up drinking alcohol and eating meat in an attempt to get healthy. And surprise, surprise, it worked pretty well. Um, because when I first went vegetarian, I didn't know what to eat. So I literally bought vegetables and rice. And, it was the mid 90s. So I bought a wok like everyone else. And I was walking vegetables and steaming rice. And that's what I was eating. And that was great. And then in true Anthony form, I as I went on, I learned that, well, hey, if I get pizza without meat on it, that's still vegetarian. Or if I get pizza with, with even with spinach on it, like that's still vegetarian. Or Ben and Jerry's ice cream, that's still vegetarian. And grilled cheese sandwiches, like when I'm out and there's nothing to eat, I can pretty much get any restaurant or store or place to make me a grilled cheese sandwich, and that's vegetarian. And then, French fries are, mostly vegetarian, so I eventually over time, after that initial probably 6 months or so, I started incorporating a lot of really unhealthy vegetarian foods into my diet. And that, yeah, maybe, I guess gain more weight. I gained all the weight back that I had lost, plus more and more and more and more. And then as I started working and sitting at a desk for most of the day, I wasn't moving as much. So the weight really just piled on.
Are you wanting to lose body fat, build lean muscle, and strengthen your bones? Do you want to once and for all stop feeling uncomfortable in your body and start feeling good about how you take care of yourself? Well, I have 3 words for you. Fit vegan coaching. And for me, this is personal because about 6 months ago, I was in a real rut. I was eating unhealthily and I was waking up not feeling good. So I reached out to Maxim Seguin, who'd been a terrific guest on this podcast and who is the founder of Fit Vegan Coaching. And I asked for help. Maxim and his team were so kind and non-judgmental. So for the first time in my life, I signed up to follow a program, and it was like a miracle. Through his coaching sessions, webinars, training app, food guides, and the support of others in the program, I transformed the way I was eating and training. And now at 61 years old, just 6 months in, I feel amazing physically and emotionally. And I think I look pretty great too. Fit Vegan Coaching is the world's top whole food, plant-based body recomposition coaching program with over 800 transformations in more than 20 countries. It's definitely one of the best investments I've ever made in myself. So if you are feeling anything like the way I was feeling 6 months ago, or maybe you just simply want more information, go to fitvegancoaching.com to book your free application call. And if you sign up, you'll get $150 off because you heard it here on Switch for Good. Now, back to the show. You noted that specific date. Those of us who have been in the 12-step program know the days when we quit. Either for me, it was being bulimic. I have friends who are gamblers and alcoholics. Were you struggling with alcohol at the time? Why do you remember that date?
I remember the date because I decided to stop drinking for a month just to see how I would feel. And I don't know if I was 21 years old, so I didn't drink in high school. So I had literally been drinking for about 4 years, but I loved to drink. And again, it was just like what I described earlier with the food. Any occasion, was associated with alcohol. Even though I was underage at the time, it was easy enough to get alcohol and to drink. And it was easier for me at the time to say that I was giving up alcohol for a month or maybe I said 3 months. But anyway, but I had a case of beer. And again, I wasn't going to let that go to waste. So I took my friend out for his birthday, and that's his birthday, that January 24th date. And, and we drank the entire case of beer, the two of us. And and then that was it. The next day I woke up and I wasn't having anything else. And I learned about myself, like I'm pretty good with hard lines. And when I say no to something, I can do it. And if I say yes to something, I can do it. But as soon as anything gets a little bit blurry, like there's no kind of sometimes with me. Because again, it's, there's always an occasion or a reason to drink or to eat something unhealthy or to eat something that, is high calorie that's going to cause me to, put on a few pounds. And knowing that about myself, like I know exactly where that leads right back to. If I do it once, then the next week I do it twice, and the next week I do it 3 times, and then all of a sudden everything's out the window.
I heard you mention that you haven't had sweets since for 15 years. Is that
Yeah.
part of your hard line that helps you stay on?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Anything that's sweetened with sugar or artificial sweeteners, I don't participate in. I would say maple syrup is kind of my gray line right now, and has been. But for example, when my wife makes something for the kids and it has maple syrup in it, like I don't eat that when it's in the house. Um, if I'm out at a dinner and it's a whole food plant-based thing and they make a dessert and it happens to have a little bit of maple syrup in it, then maybe I will have some of that. But I can't do that when it's home because I can't it kind of I don't know, the word I want to use is haunts me. Like I know that stuff's in the fridge, or I know that stuff's in the pantry, and I know that I can just walk by it and grab it. So I define that hard line. But I eat plenty of dessert like things that are sweetened with fresh fruit or even dates, and that stuff tends to not really be a problem for me, like anything as it starts to get sweeter with maple syrup or any kind of sugars or anything like that.
Yeah, I used to feel like for me, sugar is a thing. And so I used to feel that if I didn't, that somehow I was really missing out if I didn't have that sugar, like, which I didn't feel with any other food except for sweets. And I think probably some people feel about that with alcohol, like or they have to, if there's a casino there, they have to go. Otherwise, they're missing something really important. So I understand your rules about bright lines, I think, apply to a lot of people, can make life easier for a lot of people, even though people are afraid they're going to feel denied. For me, I always feel denied when I eat sugar because I can never get enough.
Yeah. And for me, having those lines, it's so freeing. Like I literally don't have to think about anything. Like it's just so easy. When it's there, then I just don't eat it. And to me, like a pile of cookies, that are out at a party or something, like it might as well almost be like a pile of rocks. Like it doesn't do anything to me. It sometimes does things to people who are around me because they ask, oh, why aren't you having this or why aren't you having that? And I do everything I can to avoid those conversations because, I know it's not really about what I'm doing. It's often about what those people are doing. But some people get upset. I mean, there was a time that I'm not necessarily proud of that I made my grandmother upset. We went to visit her, and she lives in Queens, New York, and she lived in Queens, New York. And we went to visit with me and my brother and my dad. And right when we got there, Italian grandmother in Queens, New York, she answered the door with a tray of cookies in her hand. And of course, my dad took one, my brother took one. I said, no, thanks, Grandma. And she looked at me, but she didn't say anything about it. But of course, my dad had to, like bring up the topic. And he goes, hey, Ma, ask Anthony when the last time he had a cookie was. And and I said 2005 because I don't even know what year it was. It was probably 2008, 2009, something like that. But the fact that I hadn't had a cookie in 3 or 4 years or 5 years was kind of devastating to her. And she literally, I'm shortening the story obviously, but she sat down and she started to come to tears and she said, I hate that you're not living your life. I hate that you're not enjoying yourself. I hate that you're depriving yourself of all these things. And it was really hard for her to understand that what I was really doing was freeing myself, like from all of this kind of mental stuff that was going on. I would have eaten that entire tray of cookies, and every time I got up, I would have walked through the kitchen just to take another one, like every single time. And then I would have probably felt depressed about it afterwards. And I would have been beaten up myself. And I would have said, why did I have to eat all the, like eat all those cookies? And I know we're talking about a cookie. This is not like the end of the world, but it's just so much easier for me to have that bright line where I have just do's and don'ts. And I'm glad I stuck to it that day, because I don't know where that could have went.
What a great lesson for people who feel really pressured by family members to eat a certain way, to just stay with their truth and what they know makes them happy, ultimately. Uh, Wonderful story. Let's talk now. I want to go into the story about you, why you changed and your losing weight journey. So I talked about it a little bit in the intro, but share with us, what was the catalyst that made you change these habits that you had accumulated since you were a teenager? What made you change at age 33?
I mean, the spark was being denied that life insurance policy. My wife was pregnant with our second son, and I wanted to, as a father and as a provider for my family, I wanted to make sure that my family would be taken care of if something happened to me. So it wasn't like I was going through the formalities of getting a life insurance policy. Like, this is something that I was proud to be putting in place for my family, so that if something happened, that they would be able to, to take care of themselves. And getting denied was, like a ton of bricks coming down. Thinking that this company didn't, not only would they not give me the insurance, so I couldn't be proud to know that if something did happen to me, that my family would be able to take care of themselves, but the fact that they didn't think I was going to make it 20 years was even more hard to take, because here I am holding an infant with with an 18-month-old toddler running around, or 20-month-old toddler, whatever he was. And having the time of my life. Like, I always wanted to be a dad, and I was proud to be a father. And that spark, what it really did was it forced me to take a real objective look at what my life was like. And not only that, I started thinking forward, like, what was my life going to be like if I continued on this path? And I started to, recall situations that were not only not proud of, but were also not good examples for my family. But, there were shameful moments, like walking down the aisle of an airplane, right? By myself, if I'm traveling for work, and everyone with an empty seat, has eyes on me. And I could almost feel a sense of relief when I went past, except for the unlucky person, who got to sit next to me for the flight. And, I'm a very conscientious person. I'm a caring person. I want others to feel well. So what I did then, when I crammed myself into that airplane seat, was I shrunk myself up as small as I could. And basically I made sure that I was, not trying to overflow onto anyone else's seats, which was impossible to really do, but I did my best. And which meant I was incredibly uncomfortable, and at the time I was flying to Europe a few times a year, and that's a long flight. And, and being uncomfortable, or walking into a conference room at work and finding out that all the chairs around the table were armchairs. Like, I didn't fit in armchairs, like, literally, you know. So if there was a stack of folding chairs in the corner, like, just in case there were extra people, I would try to get to these meeting rooms early so I could unfold a chair that didn't have arms on it and put it in a spot so I could sneak in there and sit down before anyone really noticed. There were, so I started looking back, and I wasn't proud of these things. And then, the two questions that really popped up were, what kind of father am I going to be for these kids? And what kind of husband am I going to be to my wife? How long before I start to become dependent on her? And she doesn't have two kids to take care of. She has two kids and a husband who can't take care of himself. And none of those scenarios that played out in my head were acceptable to me. So I just knew I had to do something about it.
So what did you do? Take us through the first few months of you doing something.
Yeah. Yeah. The first few months, I didn't know what to do. Again, I had tried everything and anything. This was now 2005. So everything that was popular for weight loss was, like Atkins but I was still vegetarian and I was proud of the fact that I was vegetarian. So I didn't want to go that route, although I was seriously considering it because nothing else was working. So I said, okay, I said a New Year's resolution, I'm going to give up sweets and soda and I'm going to stop eating so much, which to me meant essentially keeping myself hungry all the time. And I did that for a few months and I didn't lose any weight. Like nothing happened. And it was actually 3 months. And then I started to feel even more helpless and more kind of depressed because here I am. Now I'm quote unquote depriving myself. Um, when I look back, it was a little bit unfair because I obviously wasn't overweight because of soda and sweets, because I probably didn't eat that much soda, or drink that much soda, or eat that many sweets, which is why it had no effect on my weight loss. But I was still highly motivated and determined, so I started searching on Google, and I literally put in the terms vegetarian weight loss because I needed something that was going to allow me to still be vegetarian and it was going to help me to lose weight. And that's when Dr. Furman's book, Eat to Live, popped up. And it was, it just seemed perfect for me because on the front of the cover, it said fast and sustained weight loss. And I was like, sign me up. Like I was ready to do anything that would get me fast and sustained weight loss. But the real clincher for me was when I read all of the comments that people were writing about the book on Amazon. And no one was talking about weight loss. Everyone was talking about getting healthy and how losing weight becomes a side effect of getting healthy if you're overweight. And if you're not overweight and you get healthy, you maintain your healthy weight. And that was like boggling to me because for the first time in my life, I didn't want to lose weight to be smaller. I wanted to lose weight so that I could get that insurance policy. But the insurance policy, probably my weight was only one factor, right? What I really needed to do is get healthy. And once I could figure out how to get healthy, then I would also lose weight. Then I'm going to get the insurance policy. Then I'm going to know that I'm going to be around for my kids and that I'll be able to take care of them and experience all the joys of raising a family.
Tell us about the book. Dr. Furman's been on our show, but for people who haven't heard his interviews, can you share with us what was it that changed? You'd already given up sugar and soda, which are usually big issues in a lot of people's lives, but it had not had an effect. So, what was going on with this book that made a difference?
So, what Dr. Furman says is that need to eat a ton. Well, I say a ton. He says you need to eat a lot of really highly nutritious foods that are also relatively low in calories, right? So what that means is vegetables, raw and cooked vegetables. It means fruits. It means beans, and some nuts and seeds, and almost nothing else. And the almost nothing else part for me means, cutting out dairy, which I think was a big one for me. Cutting out all processed food, and food products. And I started reading all the nutritional labels. And the only thing that I cared about on any nutritional label was the ingredients. Like I didn't care what it said on the front of the package. I didn't care what it said in the nutrition facts. I just needed to know what was in it. And as soon as there were things in there that I didn't recognize the names of, or if there was a list of 20 different things that went into, I think I had a rule of if it had more than 4 or 5 ingredients, then it wasn't for me. So it was unprocessed food in their natural states that were naturally low in calorie, but also naturally very, very, very high in nutrients. And the way I thought about it at the time is that's what my body needs to kind of create this environment where it can heal itself and where it can get well and get better.
So, how did you do that? And what foods did you eat? Because a lot of people find that if they eat those things, they miss, well, you didn't miss meat, but you might have missed the cheese and the fat.
Yeah. So rather, I transitioned, I want to say aggressively, but not like cold turkey. So my focus was eating more fruits and vegetables every single day. And I was letting that naturally crowd out all the other stuff that I should be eating less of. So I didn't start with a hard line on no cheese. I didn't start with a hard line on no bread or flours or, like those kind of things. And I'm so glad that I did it this way. It wasn't necessarily as conscious. It's kind of what I heard or what I read in that book, how it interpreted in my mind was I need to start eating a whole lot of like big salads. I need to be eating lots of vegetables. And quite frankly, I don't have room on my plate for very much else because I need all the nutrients that are coming from this other food. And that's what's going to make me get better. So I did not say no pizza. And I still probably for about 6 months, I still continued to eat pizza. But it went from, pizza was I want to say the main course, but it was the only course, right? To then it was a huge salad. And then if there was some room left, it was a slice of pizza, even if it had cheese on it. Then it got to the point where it was, the huge salad and then pizza with vegetables on it and some cheese. And then it got to the point where it was the huge salad. And then it was, a pizza with no cheese, but with vegetables on it. And then so it kind of those kind of things faded off my plate more gradually. And after following that and going with my what I call my aggressive transition towards what Dr. Furman would call a nutritarian diet, what most of us would call now as a very healthy whole food plant-based diet. In the first month or so, I think I lost, or first maybe 2 months, I lost like 30 something pounds. And truthfully, that's all I needed. Like having that bit of success and having that momentum, like that was it. Every single day I woke up, I was excited and I'm like, yes, I'm going to do better today than I did yesterday. And by the end of this week, I'm even going to lose more weight. Like, and it started to almost become like a game, or it was like this kind of self-rewarding cycle where it just became, I don't want to sound cliche, but it almost kind of became easy, but easy because it was so motivating to continue and to continue to do better.
And did you feel full?
I did. Um, I feel as full as I could feel. I felt satisfied. And when I was hungry, I wouldn't have a small snack. I would have a huge snack. But what a huge snack became to me was maybe 2 or 3 apples, or an apple and a pear. Or when I would drive home from work, I would pull into the Trader Joe's probably and get a whole bag of those cut and peeled carrots, or those baby carrots. And there's a pound of them in there. And I would, I had a long commute. I would eat the whole bag on the way home. And that's a pound of carrots. I think that's a total of about 130 calories, which is, almost nothing. And it's packed with all those nutrients, in those carrots. So I didn't let myself feel hungry, because when I was hungry, I used that as an opportunity to eat more vegetables, essentially, or fruit.
Overall, do you feel like you were eating fewer calories? Why were you losing weight if you were eating a lot and you even didn't take out pizza in the beginning, but you still lost weight when the months before you had restricted in a way because you kind of went a little hungry and you'd taken out soda and sugar. Now you'd taken out, I'm assuming you didn't eat soda or sugar on the nutritarian diet, but you seem like you were eating a lot of food.
Yeah, I was eating a lot of food, but it was a lot of very low calorie food. It was huge salads. It was fresh fruit, fresh vegetables, lots of water content. Again, it wasn't very dense. So I would have to guess, I never really counted calories, but I would have to guess I was eating a lot less calories than I was eating before. I know now that 1 pound of green or fresh vegetables is about 70 calories. That's almost nothing. I stopped putting dressing on my salads, and I didn't even try to make my own dressing or anything like that. I literally just learned to really enjoy a salad with no dressing. And I would probably put some fruit on it. Well, not probably, but I would put, if I was on a buffet and they had like chopped pineapple or something, I would put that on top of my salad, and I would use that as, kind of a little bit of contrast flavor there to make it a little bit interesting. I would put beans on my salad. That would make them very filling. But I wouldn't put dressing. And I think, even eating a salad with dressing, you can get 2 or 3 times as many calories from the dressing as you can get from all the vegetables. But so I do believe it was much lower in calories, but it wasn't lower in volume than the food that I was eating before. And that's kind of how I measured with my eyes and everything. Like I was eating a lot of food by volume, but I was probably eating much less food in terms of calories.
You haven't mentioned grains. Did you not eat grains?
Not very many. I didn't get into oatmeals and stuff like that for breakfast. I was having fresh fruit for breakfast, and that was it. Mostly because where I worked, they had this cafeteria, and at 7:30 it opened up, and they had this big fresh cut fruit bar, and I could just fill a container, and they would weigh it, and I would pay by weight. And it was, it was cantaloupe, and it was honeydew, and it was pineapple, and sometimes they put berries on there, and I would think to myself, wow, I'm really making out today because I'm paying bulk rate for all these blackberries or blueberries or whatever it was. It was exactly the same as how I used to live and eat, meaning kind of it was fun and it was enjoyable and all of that. It just was different foods.
So you lost about 30 pounds in the first 2 months or so, and then another 130 in the next a year and a half. You did this without exercise.
I lost the first 90 something pounds without doing any exercise at all. And when I say that, it's because my life kind of changed. My exercise used to be occasionally going for a bike ride, or it used to be skateboarding with my friends, or in the wintertime, it would be snowboarding. But now with a toddler and newborn at home, like those kind of things were on hold. I was working a lot, and I was spending all my non-working time, truthfully laying on the floor playing with the kids, which was a lot of fun, but it wasn't a lot of physical activity. But I think that worked to my advantage in the beginning, because if I would have tried by starting a new exercise routine, I would have felt probably more hungry because of, burning calories essentially while exercising. And I know for sure I would have felt entitled. I would have felt like, oh, I worked out this morning. I can have an extra, I can have 2 slices of pizza today. Or, oh, I worked out this morning. Why not have, some, I don't know, another handful of nuts or whatever it would have been. But instead, I didn't add any exercise until, essentially 9 months or so after starting on this new kind of diet and lifestyle. And now I just had so much energy that I wanted to exercise to burn off the energy I already had. So I still didn't feel like I needed to eat more now that I was exercising, because really I was just trying to spend some of this energy. And that was probably the first time that I realized I didn't feel that good before, at 360 pounds, because now I would wake up and when the alarm went off or when the sun came up, I just got up. And I just started doing stuff. I didn't have to drag myself out of bed. I didn't have to pull myself to get motivated to start my day. It's like, all right, let's go.
Did you know that as we age, our bodies produce less collagen? This vital protein that keeps our skin firm and supports muscles and joints starts to dwindle, leaving us with a few more laugh lines and a bit less bounce in our step. But there's good news. Yes. With Vedge Vegan Collagen, you can naturally replenish this essential building block and get your glow back. Through innovative extraction techniques from nutrient-rich broccoli and carrots, they've crafted 100% plant-based collagen that effectively reduces the signs of aging. It supports skin hydration, enhances joint flexibility, and strengthens hair and nails, so you can look and feel fabulous. And the best part, there are no chemicals, no preservatives, and absolutely no animal products, just pure plant-based goodness. So stay youthful, stay active, and choose Vedge Collagen. Elevate your daily routine and let nature help you shine from the inside out. You're just gonna go to vedgenutrition.com. That is VEDGE nutrition.com and use code the number 4, G, for 30% off. Right? You got it. One more time, vedgenutrition.com and use code S4G for 30% off your order. Now, back to the episode.
Well, I think studies show that because we only have so much willpower in a day, that if we, like you said, add exercise on top of it, usually that can crush our program, and the way we eat is more important in terms of losing weight, and exercise is important for maintenance and for health. Do you see it that way?
I do see it that way. I think exercise is incredibly important for health. I think that all the exercise, I probably attributed 10 to 20% of my weight loss to exercise because I started running a lot, right? And I ran because I loved it. I ran because it was fun. I ran because it was a new challenge. I ran because for the first time in my life I could run and all of those things. But even though I started running so much, my weight loss, the rate of weight loss did not increase. Aside from that initial bump of 30 pounds, I lost almost exactly 8 pounds a month, like every month. Like very rarely would I lose more than 8 pounds, and very rarely would I lose less than 8 pounds. And it didn't matter if I was, if I was exercising or not. Like that's how much weight I was losing.
Did you have any times when it was hard? You mentioned that it was easy, but were there times when you wanted to backslide, or you did backslide? And if so, what did you do? How'd you deal with that?
I kept myself focused on two things. In the beginning, it was hard because I didn't necessarily know what to do. But I was really motivated about this worst case scenario picture that I had painted in my mind, right? And then after I started transitioning, I would say when I got 3 to maybe 6 months into it is when it really started to become easier because I had enough of routines in place. And now I was no longer motivated by that fear or what I was trying to avoid. Now I was motivated by the positive things that I saw coming in the future and the things that I was looking forward to. And I wouldn't have been able to stay motivated by fear for very long at all. Like I'm lucky that I made it through that first 3-month period where that sent me back to Google, to try to find something else. Because it's not a very enjoyable way to live, being motivated by fearful things. But once I got progress and I lost those initial 30 pounds or so, it was challenging to navigate new social situations. It was challenging to figure out if I got, if I was going to a new restaurant, how was I going to order? How was I going to eat? How was I going to do that in a way that didn't put a spotlight on me at the table as well? Like I didn't want to be the most complicated person at the table. So I'm trying to think like that's how my motivation worked, but I don't want to discount the effort that it takes to change. It took a lot of effort. I just happened to be so excited. At first I was so scared, and then I was so excited that the effort felt relatively insignificant for me. And I think that's a headspace that, again, I'm grateful that I accidentally got myself into. I do think people can do a good job of recreating that for themselves now. And usually when I talk to people or when I want to help somebody, it's a lot of like kind of reflective writing, like write about the things that you wish were different. And when kind of stream of conscious writing, just sit there with pen and paper. Don't even try to do it on a computer or anything like that. Just write a lot of stuff that you don't like with your current situation. And then do the flip side and design this kind of perfect scenario for yourself and what your perfect life is going to look like and how all your problems are going to dissolve, and then get excited about that and try to create those two kind of poles, the one that's pushing you forward and the one that's pulling you, that's pulling you near, and kind of use those things. So because change is hard, but living a healthy lifestyle, living a healthy vegan lifestyle, living a healthy whole food plant-based vegan diet and lifestyle, that's not hard. It's just really hard to change.
So it's that beginning period that we just have to get through so that we set the habits. So if someone is starting and they start to crave their old habit, whatever it is, what would you suggest they do? Start to write right away?
Um, I think that's a good idea, is to start to, write about things. Also, just distract yourself, like disrupt yourself, like find something, and you have to do this before the moment comes. Like, what's one thing that you really enjoy that will distract you from anything else, and kind of allow yourself or give yourself permission to do that when needed. And I'm not suggesting a food thing. I'm suggesting, like I don't know, if you really like to, I don't know, play with your dog, or if you really like to go for a walk, or if you really like to go out to your favorite healthy restaurant where you can get a big salad. And when you get in those funky situations, like have something to look forward to that's not that old habit. For me, it's all about repetitions. And I don't think we're fair to ourselves when we go back and forth. Or like when we don't have those bright lines. Because we don't expect, like, I don't know, this thing that just pops into my mind all the time is like when people feed a pet dog from the table, right? Like, if you go to someone's house and they feed the dog from the table, like, it right away when you sit down, because as soon as everyone sits down at the table, the dog is there, like, kind of with his nose on everyone's lap and looking for something, right? But I've been to other people's houses who have pets, and they don't feed the dog from the table. And when everyone sits down at the table, the dog goes and does whatever it wants, right? But it certainly doesn't care what the people at the table are doing, right? And I don't think either one of those dogs is less happy. you know if anything, the one that's got his nose in everyone's lap is being told to stay away. It's just as confused as could be, because, like, wait a second, sometimes I come over here and you give me food, and now today I'll come over here and you're telling me to go away. Like, we do the same things to ourselves, right? We expect ourselves to be able to behave one way in a situation at one point in time, and then at another point in time in the exact same situation, we expect ourselves to be able to, to be okay with behaving differently. So for me, consistency coming in from the beginning, and realizing that one cookie or one snack or one slice of pizza is much more than one cookie or one snack or one slice of pizza. It's really permission to keep myself in this kind of zone where I'm going back and forth in this state of confusion where I don't know what I do and don't do. I don't know if that works for everyone, but that's how it worked out for me.
Less peace and serenity. And when we're in limbo and we've and you're right about not deciding beforehand what to do. And I recommend even like reading. You don't have to do something healthy. You can read a trashy magazine. Read People magazine. And when you never read it, you're too embarrassed. Go ahead, read, do it. If it's going to help you be healthier ultimately, then I recommend that kind of, like you said, distraction. And yeah. So if someone says, "Oh wow, I'm inspired by Anthony. I want to lose quite a lot of weight. I want to change my habits." What are some small actionable steps that you recommend they take right away? What would be the first few steps you would recommend they take?
Yeah, I think the first thing is to get really clear on your purpose and your why, right? And a lot of people, there are so many ways to do that now. But again, the most effective way for me to do that is that stream of conscious writing. That's what's worked the best for me. And and dig deep. I thought I wanted to lose weight because I wanted to look better. And I did that my whole life and it never worked. And when I really figured, well, why do I want to lose weight? Well, I mean, sure, I'd like to look better, but really I want to be healthy. Well, why do I want to be healthy? Well, I want to be able to provide for my family. Well, why do I want to be able to provide for my family? Well, I want to be able to provide for my family because I brought these kids into the world and they don't have anyone else and they're kind of counting on me. And whatever I teach them to do at a young age and whatever I'm able to do with them at a young age, I'm kind of a role model, at least for a period of time. And that's important for me. So it becomes a strong enough purpose that that it's pretty easy to, it really helps, right? I mean, looking better, I was already married. My wife somehow loved me, even though I was big and unhealthy. We probably neither of us really knew how unhealthy I was. so it wasn't like I needed to look better to go out to the bar. But if you're, if that's what's motivating somebody because they want to be able to have a relationship and they're preventing themselves from having a relationship because of things that are going on, or because they have this feeling about their weight or the self-conscious, then that could be an incredible motivator, for someone. Like, but just get clear on what that is, and then start by adding things. Start by doing more. What can you do more of every day? And I just think it's a much more enjoyable approach rather than what you can do less of. And, for me, I still recommend every day, like, eat more vegetables, and eat more fruit, and start doing that. And then when those habits start to roll, like, give up things, but give them up for good, so that you don't send yourself back and forth in that, do I, don't I kind of scenarios.
And it sounds like you gave up the easier things first and kept the things that you were really dear to you, like the pizza, for later, when you got more motivated and excited about your new life.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly right. Some of the later things I gave up was, I would still go to Mexican restaurants and I would get the veggie fajitas. I even had it to the point where they would prepare them for me with no oil, because I was going to this restaurant at lunchtime a lot. They would just water saute the vegetables for me. And but the chips were one of the last things I gave up. So first I started just loading tons of, like, a huge pile of pico de gallo on my chip, so I was like, well, it's like half chip and half tomatoes, and then, but then I remember giving up the chips. I'm like, okay, these are not important to me anymore. And once I decided that, then they were gone for good. And I still, to this day, don't eat the chips, but I don't miss them. It's not, not giving them up, but it's not a struggle. Now, when I'm at the restaurant, the chips come to the table and I don't eat them. It's not a big deal.
Because it's a bright line now. It's like, it's not my food.
That's right.
Right.
That's
It's
right.
very clear to you. So it's been 15 years since you lost that 160 pounds.
Yep.
Tell us, what are you doing to keep it off? And why did you stop it there? Were you at your ideal weight? What happened?
I think so. That's what I think happened, because I remember I was training for my first half marathon, and I was continuing my plan of eating this very healthy, whole food, plant-based, vegan diet. And I weighed myself in August of 2007, and I weighed like 197 pounds. And then I weighed myself in September. At the end of September, I weighed 197 pounds. And then I weighed myself at the end of October, and I weighed right around 197 pounds. Um, and I was still doing everything exactly the same. And to this day, I still do everything exactly the same. I still eat the same kinds of foods. I still err on the side of really simple meals versus more complicated or elaborate recipes. And I do the same. I will say that my weight has fluctuated, but it's only fluctuated between, like, 5 and 10 pounds, one way or another over the past 15 years. And to me, that's just incredible. Like that's never been like, I've never, like, I find myself wearing clothes that I had been wearing like 10 years ago. My wife and I just went out to a Halloween costume party last weekend. And then the next day, Facebook memory popped up. I was wearing the same costume 12 years ago. Like, we have them in a bin, we reuse them. But like, I used to have to get new clothes all the time because I was just outgrowing them, yeah. So even with that little bit of fluctuation now, it's just because I just keep doing the exact same thing.
When you gain, let's say, 7 pounds, do you do anything different to make sure that doesn't keep going up?
No, because I guess I just have the confidence in knowing that this is what my body, does. There are times now I do notice with exercise. If I'm not training for anything, or if I'm skipping a few runs, I feel like, a couple of pounds come on. But again, it's like 2 or 3 or 4 pounds. And then I start running consistently again, or spend more time on the bicycle and stuff like that. And and I, lose 2 or 3 pounds. I feel like it's probably normal fluctuations at that point. But I would get nervous if it started really creeping up, but that hasn't happened. And I think it's because I keep doing the same, I keep eating the same, and generally living the same kind of lifestyle that I have been this whole time. And now I'm doing it because I enjoy it, not because I'm watching the scale.
But it sounds like you are watching the scale a little bit. Is that just to reassure yourself that you don't go back up again?
Yeah, and I probably do now. I probably weigh myself like twice a month, something like that. But when I was losing weight, I was weighing myself 3 times a day, and I knew what I weighed when I woke up in the morning. Then I would go work out, and then I knew what I weighed after I worked out, and that was like a pretty cool number. And then I would start drinking water and eating for the day, and then I knew what I weighed when I went to sleep. And I did that, for probably 5 years. I that was just my normal routine. And again, I don't feel like I was emotionally tied to the scale, but other than I would, well, maybe I was, because when it went down during that weight loss period, like it was motivating and it was exciting to watch the scale go down. But if it didn't go down, it never really bothered me. So, compared to what I was doing then versus, what, I'm not really on the scale like that. Like, I'm not micromanaging it at this point. I'm kind of trusting it. And truthfully, I don't need the scale to tell me when I'm 3 or 4 or 5 pounds up, because I just feel it a little bit in my waistband or my pants, or my legs or something like that. But yeah, I'm not really paying super close attention to it.
So you have much more of an awareness of your body than you did when you were younger and not as healthy.
Yeah, probably so. Yeah, I think so.
What are some of the keystone habits you feel you have on a daily basis that you do to keep you thriving and healthy and at this weight?
Yeah. Some of the things I do, like I spend my fun time doing active things. Like when I get together with friends, it's to go, like, when someone's in town, my first thing is, oh, what are you doing in town? Can I meet you for a run? Or a walk, or, I've got 2 bikes. Do you want to go for a bike ride? Or now we started playing pickleball, like everyone else apparently. So now I'm like, hey, let's go play pickleball. It's that kind of stuff. Um, I do fun, fun things, other kinds of activities that are indoors that aren't activities, but again, they're not necessarily centered around food. Like we can have a game night with friends where we play games, and there usually is food around, but it's not like it's a food focus. It's more often I get together with people to do things rather than to eat or to enjoy a meal or drinks together. That's one of the big ones. And then I just will always maintain that consistency, meaning that I don't tempt myself or tease myself. I think that's, people would very easily say, oh, you've already lost the weight, now you can have dessert. Or people say, oh, you don't have a problem anymore, now you can have a drink. Or like it's just so much easier and so much more fun to just stay consistent and not to test it or tempt it.
Just to follow up on that, yeah, a lot of people, I think they have a goal of a certain weight, and then when they get to that weight, then they stop doing the things that got them to that weight, and they often, because they don't have a plan, they just plan for that end goal. They go back to their old habits. It sounds like you haven't changed anything, because you weren't on a diet like you were on before finding Eat to Live, the book by Joel Furman. You didn't have to change anything.
That's right. And then some of the other thing is I'm always learning. I've read everyone's book since Eat to Live has came out. Everyone's book. There's so many people who are writing, about how to heal and get healthy. And then the other thing that I think is really helped me a lot is helping others. And that comes in, for the first 12 years or so since my transition, that came in mostly in just sharing my experience, like some of what we're doing today, in the hopes that that helps to spark something in someone, or someone can pull a tidbit from that to do something. Or when people reach out, you know answering them, replying to them, talking to them, and helping them. And not necessarily that I'm such a role model, but I do feel like helping others helps me a lot. And it helps me, like, I'm going to be honest, I'm not going to try to suggest something to someone else that I'm not also practicing myself. And that's been a big part now. And now I'm able to do that with my professional career as well. And I don't want to underestimate the value in that. and not being a pain in the neck to people. I'm not going out looking for victims, who want to hear what I have to say, but certainly being open and sharing whenever someone reaches out to me or when someone asks me.
What share with us before I want to talk about Love Life telehealth, but tell us what you eat in a day now. Give us an example of a day.
My simple days are fruit for breakfast. Lately, that's been frozen berries for the most part, oftentimes with a chopped up banana in it, and then either some walnuts or some hemp seeds or some chia seeds or some flax seeds or whatever I have around. I just sprinkle on top of it, and that's breakfast. And that's pretty consistent because breakfast is my first meal of the day. That's the one I have usually the most control over. And then I also realized that breakfast's job is to make sure that I'm hungry for lunch. So I don't need a huge breakfast. I don't need to feel stuffed or full at breakfast, especially if I'm waiting, if I'm not eating right away when I wake up, if I'm eating around 9 o'clock. Like that meal really only has to get me to like 11:30 or 12 or 12:30, in the afternoon, and then I can have a lunch meal. So that's breakfast. Then lunch is usually beans and greens, and that can take all different shapes. When I'm home and I don't have a lot of food prepared, it can be a can or two of chickpeas with a full bag of frozen spinach, and I can literally put that on the stove in a pot all together, spill some salsa on top of it, and stir it up. And honestly, it's delicious. If I'm out, that can be a big beautiful salad with a side of steamed broccoli with it, and maybe some some black beans or something like that. If I'm out and on the go, sometimes that beans and greens is wrapped in a tortilla shell in the shape of a like a vegetable burrito. It's as easy as going to some place like Chipotle or something like that to get something. And then dinner varies a little bit. My wife made roasted butternut squash the other day, and that's delicious. She got these small ones and literally just cut them in half and baked them, and they're soft. And like now that they're cold, we have leftovers cold in the fridge. I can just pick it up and eat it like that. But it's some kind of a cooked vegetable dish. Or in the winter time, it's getting cool now in the Northeast here. I'm in New Jersey, and I'm starting to think about soups and and that kind of stuff will be for dinner. We have some meals that we go to for like special occasions and holidays, and it's not that they're any more or less healthy than the meals that I eat every day. It's just that they take more work to prepare, so I don't do that all the time. But like we have a eggplant rollatini recipe that I love. We have a chickpea and potato curry recipe that I love. And like if people are coming over, I'll take a little bit of time and make something. I don't expect everyone else to be satisfied with a can of beans and some frozen spinach, but in a pinch, it's quick and easy and it works for me.
Yeah, I like simple foods too, and actually don't feel great usually eating out at a restaurant, even if I eat at a vegan restaurant, because the food is more complicated, certainly more oily and salty, which is something I don't like. Salt, so you probably get not too much of because you do eat simple foods.
Yeah, but I can tell like the next day I feel a little bit like, well, I feel almost dehydrated. Like I really have to double up on the water after eating some restaurant foods that I can tell are really high in salt.
So tell us about your business, Love Life Telehealth, of which you are co-founder and CEO.
Yeah, thanks. It's this is like the merge of my personal passion and my professional career, and I'm just so excited about it. I tried thinking about, how can I help others now? I didn't mention that the whole time I was um, unhealthy, and then for years while I was losing weight, and then after that, I was working in pharmaceutical research. And I had more of an informatics role there, where I was helping with data analysis and things like that for to help bring new drugs to market. And I was really excited about that when I started working there because I thought it was an opportunity to help people. And through my own transformation, I realized, wow, I would rather help people to not need medications than to come up with new medicines that may or may not help people to actually feel better, even if it keeps them healthy. So it took a long time to figure out where that might fit and what I could do. And then after doing some exploring, I came up with the idea to start a telemedicine company. I knew a lot of doctors who were not satisfied with the way that conventional medicine is practiced. I knew a lot of people who wish they had physicians who could help them, especially people who were on medications like with hypertension or with diabetes, type 2 diabetes particularly, or other like autoimmune conditions and other things. They wanted a doctor who could help guide them. And so what Love Life Telehealth is essentially is a place for these people to meet. And I have basically the role of my life, which is helping to connect people with doctors who are going to help them to heal and help them to feel better and enjoy all of these incredible side benefits that come from taking care of treating the root cause of your conditions and creating this healing environment in the body where the body just heals itself from its medical conditions and then starts to really thrive.
So for example, if I have diabetes and I'm looking for a doctor who could prescribe me a healthy diet and my doctor's just giving me pills, can I contact love.life telehealth and say, I'd like a doctor and I live in Oregon? Does that mean you'll find me a doctor in Oregon, or can I have a pick of doctors from all over the country?
Yeah, we have 6 doctors right now, and they're not only doctors, they're incredible human beings. And this is what they do all day is they help people they treat medical conditions and help patients with chronic disease, and then also help people to optimize their diet and lifestyle for preventing disease. So even if you come to see a doctor and you're not sick, the conversation is going to be focused on making sure that you're continuing to not be sick. And then we have patients who once you get rid of your chronic disease or your current health conditions, then you start thinking about preventing new conditions from coming in the future. And then once you're pretty set on prevention, then you start thinking about how am I going to live a long and healthy life for more years than I imagined, right? And then it becomes a conversation about longevity. So the doctors do all of that. We have 6 doctors, and they are combined. They're licensed to see patients in every single state in the United States. So literally everyone listening now could go to telehealth.love.life, and you can browse the physicians. There's a little, if you click on appointments, there's a little pull down. You just pick your state and it shows you which doctors are licensed to see you. And you can click on their profile and you can watch a little video of them introducing themselves and talking about, what they're passionate about and how they help their patients and how they live their own life. These are doctors who also live the lifestyle themselves. Many of them have also healed, and they understand firsthand. So they're not just kind of teaching you from a textbook kind of, they're teaching you from personal experience. And they use their combined knowledge. The doctors meet twice per month to talk about cases and to share successes and to share challenges and to help each other. So no matter who you see at Love Life Telehealth, you're really getting like the combined knowledge of all the doctors together behind the scenes. So I'm excited about it. I think it's an incredible opportunity for people who really want to thrive and be healthy, to see a doctor who's going to share that focus with them. I just think back, and I had overweight doctors my whole life telling me to lose weight, and it was hard. Again, this is not anything against people who are overweight. It's just like, it's a puzzle. So it's refreshing for me to connect patients with doctors who really have that firsthand understanding. They can really empathize, they can really put themselves in the patient's position, and they can really help them to overcome the challenges that they need to in order to really heal and be healthy and live a joyful life. Like that's the goal. It's not just to get numbers down. It's really for how are you going to get to the point where you're not just living life, you're really loving life. That's where the name comes from.
Well, you're really passing it on because it sounds like you are you are an example of that. So thank you so much for being on the show. The URL for the business will be in our show notes. And Anthony, is there anywhere else that people can find you?
I do have Instagram myself. It's AMESCLO on Instagram and Facebook, and you can follow me. To be fair, it's probably going to be half things that I think people might find motivating, and other half pictures of me and my family doing stuff and kind of enjoying our own lives. But I certainly love to participate in that community. But we're really doing everything we can to share useful information to everyone through all of the Love Life telehealth social channels and our YouTube channel. The doctors are constantly doing, free webinars and talks and giving as much kind of healing and life-saving advice as they can for free, and then also available there to see patients.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. It was really fun talking with you. And I appreciate the opportunity. Thanks.